The moment my husband told me he wanted a divorce because he'd found his true love, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg him to stay. Instead, I picked up my phone, called my assistant, and watched his face go pale as I calmly said 3 sentences that would change both our lives forever. But let me back up. It was a Tuesday evening in March when Adrian came home early from work. That should have been my first clue. In the last 5 years of our 15-year marriage, Adrian rarely came home before 8 o'clock. He'd claimed he was busy with architecture projects, building his portfolio, meeting with potential clients. I'd believed him because I wanted to. Because believing him was easier than facing the truth that had been staring me in the face for months. I was in the kitchen of our 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, the house I'd paid for with money from my marketing firm. I was wearing a blue silk blouse and black slacks, fresh from a client meeting. My natural hair was pulled back in a low bun and I was tired. Not just physically tired but soul tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying the weight of 2 people's dreams on your shoulders while only one of you does the heavy lifting. Adrian walked in and I knew immediately something was different. He wasn't wearing his usual tired expression, the one that said the world was against him and his architectural genius would never be recognized. Instead, he looked almost excited. Nervous but excited. Like a teenager about to ask someone to prom. "Simone, we need to talk," he said, loosening his tie. It was a tie I'd bought him. Most of his wardrobe came from my credit card. I put down the tomato I was slicing for our salad. "Okay. Talk." He sat at the kitchen island, the marble countertop reflecting the pendant lights I'd chosen when we renovated 3 years ago. Another expense I'd covered. I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I waited, my hand still on the cutting board. Something in my gut already knew. Women always know. We just pretend we don't because the knowing hurts too much. "I've met someone," Adrian said. "Her name is Bethany. She's real, Simone. She's down to earth. She doesn't care about money or status or any of that stuff. She gets me. She understands my art." I blinked slowly, processing his words. His art. He called his architecture his art, even though he hadn't completed a significant project in 3 years. Even though I'd been paying his office rent, his software subscriptions, his professional association fees. Even though every business dinner he'd attended had been charged to my American Express card. "You've met someone?" I repeated, my voice flat. "I know this is hard to hear," he continued, and I almost laughed at the rehearsed quality of his speech. He'd practiced this. "But I think we both know our marriage has been over for a while. We're just going through the motions. You're always working and I need someone who has time for me. Someone who sees me, not just my potential." The irony of that statement was so thick I could have sliced it with the knife I was holding. I was the one who'd seen his potential. I was the one who'd believed in him when his architecture firm failed 6 years ago. I was the one who'd said, "It's okay, baby, we'll figure it out together," while my marketing business grew from a small startup to a multi-million-dollar operation. I was the one who'd paid for his mother's medication when her insurance lapsed. I was the one who'd covered his car payments, his cell phone bills, his gym membership. I was the one who'd funded his dreams while he criticized mine. "So you want a divorce?" I said. Not a question. A statement. "I think it's best for both of us," Adrian said, and there was something almost pitying in his tone, as if he was doing me a favor. "Bethany makes me happy. She laughs at my jokes. She thinks I'm talented. She doesn't make me feel small." And there it was. The real issue. Adrian felt small because his wife was successful. Because I'd built something from nothing while he'd watched his dreams crumble. But instead of being proud of me, instead of seeing us as a team, he'd found someone who would stroke his ego and tell him the lies he wanted to hear. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "How long, Adrian?" He shifted uncomfortably. 8 months. 8 months. 2/3 of a year. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to keep our lifestyle afloat, while I'd been paying for everything from our mortgage to his mother's rent, while I'd been planning our 16th anniversary trip to Paris, my husband had been building a whole separate life with another woman. "Does she know?" I asked. "About the money?" Something flickered across Adrian's face. Guilt maybe. Or fear. "What do you mean?" "Does Bethany know that you don't have any money? That I pay for everything? That your architecture firm exists on paper only, funded entirely by my business? Does she know that the car you drive, the watch you wear, the restaurants you take her to, are all paid for by your wife?" Adrian stood up, his chair scraping against the tile floor. "That's not fair, Simone. I contribute to this household. Just because my career hit a rough patch doesn't mean." 8 years, I interrupted. "Your career has been in a rough patch for 8 years. And I've been fine with it. I've supported you. I've believed in you. I've paid for everything without complaint because I thought we were partners. I thought we were in this together. We were never partners, Adrian shot back, and finally I saw the truth of what he'd been feeling all this time. You were always the successful one. The smart one. The one everyone praised. Do you know what it's like to be Mr. Simone Bradford? To have people ask me how it feels to be married to such an impressive woman? To see the pity in their eyes because I'm not as successful as my wife. I felt something inside me go very cold and very calm. This was it. This was the moment I'd been avoiding for years. The moment when I'd have to face the fact that my husband resented me not for anything I'd done wrong, but for everything I'd done right. So you found someone who thinks you're impressive, I said softly. Someone who doesn't know the truth. Bethany loves me for who I am, Adrian insisted. Bethany loves who she thinks you are, I corrected. She thinks you're successful. She thinks you have money. She thinks you're taking her to expensive restaurants because you can afford it, not because your wife's credit card pays the bill. Adrian's face flushed red. You don't know anything about her. I know enough, I said. I picked up my phone from the counter. I assume you want to move out soon. I'll get my things this weekend, he said, looking relieved that I wasn't fighting him. That's what he'd expected, I realized. He'd expected tears and pleading. He'd expected me to beg him to stay, to promise I'd change, to make myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Instead, I dialed Candace, my assistant and one of my closest friends. She answered on the second ring. Hey Simone, what's up? I looked directly at Adrian as I spoke, my voice clear and steady. Candace, I need you to do 3 things for me right now. First, cancel all credit cards that have Adrian's name on them. Second, call Adrian's mother's pharmacy and let them know we'll no longer be covering her medication costs. Third, contact our security company and have them change all the locks on the house. I'll need new keys made by tomorrow morning. Adrian's face went from red to white in an instant. Simone, wait. Is that everything? Candace asked, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. She'd never liked Adrian, had told me more than once that I deserved better. That's everything for now, I said. Thank you. I hung up and set my phone down, meeting Adrian's horrified gaze with perfect calm. What did you just do? He whispered. I'm setting you free, I replied. You wanted a divorce because you found someone who doesn't care about money. Now you'll get to prove it. See how much Bethany loves you when you can't take her to 5-star restaurants. See how down-to-earth she is when you tell her you need to borrow money for gas. See how real your connection is when she realizes that everything you've been showing her was built on your wife's bank account. My mother needs that medication, Adrian said, his voice rising. She has a heart condition. Your mother has a son, I replied. A son who can get a job and pay for her medication himself. I've been supporting her for 5 years, Adrian. 5 years of paying her rent, her medical bills, her groceries. Not because she's my mother, but because I loved you. But I'm done being the bank for your entire family while you go off and play happy couple with someone else. You can't do this, Adrian said, but there was no conviction in his voice. He knew I could. He knew I had every right to. I just did, I said. You wanted out of this marriage. Congratulations. You're out. But you don't get to leave with my money, my house, or my support. You wanted to be with someone who loves you for you, not for what you can provide. Well, now you'll see exactly what you have to offer without my resources backing you up. Adrian stared at me like he'd never seen me before. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd be mature about this. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. You thought I'd roll over and let you walk all over me? You thought I'd keep paying your bills while you built a new life with someone else? You thought wrong. Where am I supposed to go tonight? He asked, and I heard the panic creeping into his voice. That's not my problem anymore, I said. You have 8 hours before the locks change. I suggest you pack quickly. I turned back to my tomato, resuming my chopping as if we just discussed what to watch on television, not the end of our 15-year marriage. Behind me, I heard Adrian's footsteps retreat toward our bedroom, heard the frantic sounds of him making phone calls, probably to Bethany, probably realizing for the first time that his new life wasn't going to be as easy as he'd imagined. And I kept chopping vegetables, kept preparing my dinner, kept breathing in and out as my world shifted on its axis. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I'd save that for later when he was gone, when I was alone. Right now, I had to be strong. Right now, I had to show him that Simone Bradford didn't crumble when someone walked away. She rebuilt. She moved forward. She survived. And more than that, she thrived. The house felt different the next morning. Bigger. Quieter. What? I'd barely slept, but that had nothing to do with regret. Every time I'd started to drift off, I'd heard Adrian in the guest bedroom, frantically packing his belongings, making phone calls in hushed, desperate tones. Around midnight, I'd heard his car pull out of the driveway. I'd gotten up and watched from the bedroom window as his taillights disappeared down our street, probably heading to Bethany's apartment in the city. Good riddance. Now, standing in my kitchen wearing a green silk robe, sipping coffee from my favorite mug, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The morning sun streamed through the windows, hitting the granite countertops and making everything look clean and new. My phone buzzed. "Candace." "Everything's done," she said when I answered. "Cards canceled. Pharmacy notified. Locks being changed at 10 this morning. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I said honestly. "Is that weird?" "Not even a little bit," Candace replied. "You've been carrying that man for years. Of course you feel lighter now that you've put him down." I smiled despite myself. Candace had been with me since I started my firm 8 years ago. She'd watched my marriage deteriorate from the inside, had seen Adrian's resentment grow as my success expanded. She'd bitten her tongue for years, but I knew how she really felt. "My sister's coming over at noon," I said. "Can you clear my afternoon schedule?" "Already done," Candace said. "And Simone? I'm proud of you." That took guts. After we hung up, I showered and dressed in a red blazer and crisp white pants. My natural hair fell in soft curls around my shoulders. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I looked present. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to be smaller, quieter, less successful so my husband wouldn't feel inadequate. I was just me. And that felt good. My phone rang again at 9:30. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" "Simone, it's Margaret. Adrian's mother." Her voice was sharp with panic. "What is going on?" "The pharmacy just called and said my prescription isn't covered anymore. They want $800. $800 I don't have." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Margaret, Adrian and I are getting divorced. I can no longer cover expenses for his family members." "But I need that medication," she protested. "My heart condition." "I understand," I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "But Adrian is your son. He needs to take responsibility for your care now. I've been covering your expenses for 5 years out of the goodness of my heart, but I'm not obligated to continue. Especially not when your son is divorcing me." "He said you threw him out," Margaret said, her tone accusatory. "He said you're being vindictive because he found someone who makes him happy." I laughed, the sound surprising even me. "Is that what he told you? Did he also tell you that he's been having an affair for 8 months? That he used my money to take his girlfriend to expensive restaurants while I paid your rent and medical bills? Did he mention any of that?" Silence on the other end of the line. "Margaret, I wish you well," I continued. "But your son needs to grow up and take care of his responsibilities. That includes you. I suggest you call him and remind him that he has a mother who needs medication. Maybe it'll be the wake-up call he needs to actually get a real job." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, not from anger but from adrenaline. I'd never spoken to Margaret like that before. I'd always been polite, accommodating, generous. I'd played the role of perfect daughter-in-law even when she'd criticized everything from my career to my decision not to have children yet. No more. The locksmith arrived at 10 and I watched as he installed new deadbolts on every door. New keys, shiny and silver, that only I would have copies of. When he left, I walked through the house, locking and unlocking doors, feeling the weight of those keys in my palm. This was my house. My sanctuary. And Adrian would never walk through these doors uninvited again. Nina arrived at noon carrying Thai food and a bottle of wine. My younger sister was a family law attorney with her own practice downtown. She was beautiful, sharp, and took no nonsense from anyone. When I texted her last night about what had happened, she'd responded with a string of messages that made me laugh despite everything. "Let me see your prenup," she said immediately, setting the food down on my kitchen island. She was wearing a maroon dress and heels, her hair in elegant braids. I pulled the document from my home office and handed it to her. Nina flipped through the pages, her expression growing more satisfied with each paragraph. "This is ironclad," she said finally. "Infidelity clause, separate property provision, no alimony. Simone, you're golden. He gets nothing. Absolutely nothing." "That's what I thought," I said. "But I wanted you to confirm. When did you have this drawn up?" Nina asked, looking at the date. 2 years into our marriage," I said. Back when my business was just starting to take off. My mentor Pat suggested it. She said I needed to protect myself. Smart woman, Nina said. And Adrian signed this willingly? He barely read it, I admitted. He was so confident that he'd be the successful one, that his architecture firm would explode and he'd be the breadwinner. He thought the prenup was silly, that we'd never need it. He signed it to humor me. Nina grinned. Men and their egos. Never fails. She pulled out her laptop. Okay, let's file. I'm handling your divorce personally. This is going to be quick and clean. He can fight it if he wants, but he won't win. We spent the next hour going through details. Nina explained the process, the timeline, what to expect. She told me to document everything, save every text message, keep records of all financial contributions. She warned me that Adrian would probably try to come back, try to negotiate, try to manipulate. Don't engage, she advised. All communication goes through me. If he shows up here, you call the police. If he tries to contact you at work, you document it. You give him nothing, you tell him nothing, you owe him nothing. Understood. Understood, I said. We ate lunch and drank wine, and for a little while I forgot about Adrian and Bethany and the mess of my marriage. I just enjoyed being with my sister, laughing at her stories from the courtroom, feeling grateful that I had family who had my back. My phone buzzed repeatedly throughout the afternoon. Text messages from Adrian's number. I didn't read them. I blocked the number and felt another weight lift from my shoulders. Around 4 o'clock, Nina's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her eyebrows rose. It's a lawyer. Probably Adrian's. Want me to answer? Put it on speaker, I said. Nina answered. Nina Bradford speaking. Ms. Bradford, this is Robert Chin representing Adrian Bradford in his divorce from Simone Bradford. That was fast, Nina said dryly. We literally filed 3 hours ago. Yes, well, my client is eager to resolve this matter quickly, the lawyer said. He sounded uncomfortable. He's requesting a meeting to discuss terms. There are no terms to discuss, Nina replied. There's a prenuptial agreement that's crystal clear. Your client will receive none of the marital assets as he committed adultery. This is documented and provable. He'll get his personal belongings and nothing else. My client disputes the validity of the prenup, the lawyer said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. Then he can dispute it in court and waste everyone's time, Nina said cheerfully. But I should warn you, the prenup was drawn up by Patterson and Associates, one of the best family law firms in the state. It's been reviewed multiple times. It'll hold up. Your client is wasting your time and his money. Money he doesn't have, by the way, since his soon-to-be ex-wife was funding his entire lifestyle. There was a pause. I'll relay your position to my client. You do that, Nina said. Have a great day. She hung up and we looked at each other. Then we both burst out laughing. He hired Robert Chin, Nina said, wiping her eyes. Chin is expensive. Like $500 an hour expensive. Where's Adrian getting that kind of money? Good question, I said. Maybe Bethany is more materialistic than he thought. My phone rang. This time it was Candace. You need to see this, she said. I'm sending you a link. A moment later, a text came through with a link to Instagram. I opened it and found Bethany's profile. It was public. There were hundreds of photos of her in yoga poses, at fancy restaurants, on beach vacations. And in about 20 recent photos there was Adrian. Adrian at dinner, Adrian at the beach, Adrian looking happy and successful in clothes I'd paid for. But what caught my attention was a post from 3 hours ago. A photo of Bethany looking distressed, no makeup, eyes red. The caption read, "Sometimes the universe tests us. Sometimes people aren't who they claim to be. Trust your gut, ladies. Not everything that glitters is gold." Trouble in paradise, Nina murmured, reading over my shoulder. I scrolled through the comments. Lots of supportive messages from friends. And then one comment that made me pause. Girl, did you know he was married? You can do better than a broke liar. So Bethany had discovered the truth. Adrian had no money, no successful career, no assets. Everything he'd shown her had been a mirage built on my credit cards. And now that the cards were canceled, the mirage had collapsed. I felt a twinge of something. Not sympathy exactly. But maybe a recognition that Bethany had been lied to just as much as I had. Adrian had deceived both of us, just in different ways. But that didn't mean I had any intention of reaching out to her or helping her. She'd made her choices. She'd had an affair with a married man. Whatever consequences came from that were hers to deal with. Are you okay? Nina asked, watching my face. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I'm actually okay. Is that strange? Not at all, Nina said. You're grieving the marriage you thought you had, not the one you actually had. And you're allowed to feel relief. You're allowed to feel free. Free. That's exactly what I felt. Free from the constant worry about Adrian's ego. Free from the financial burden of supporting a grown man who refused to support himself. Free from the lonely nights wondering where my husband was and why he couldn't be happy with what we'd built. I was free. And it felt better than I'd ever imagined. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal paperwork, business meetings, and late-night conversations with Nina and Candace. I threw myself into work, landing 3 new major clients and expanding my firm's services. Productivity, I discovered, came easily when you weren't emotionally drained by a failing marriage. I'd blocked Adrian's number, but he found ways to try to reach me. Emails that went straight to spam. Messages through mutual friends that I ignored. Once, he showed up at my office building, but security turned him away before he could get past the lobby. Each attempt made me more certain that I'd made the right decision. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, I got an unexpected visitor. Raymond Ellis had been Adrian's college roommate. They'd stayed close over the years, though I'd always sensed Raymond didn't quite approve of how Adrian handled things. He was a structural engineer, successful and grounded, married to a lovely woman named Claire. I hadn't seen him in months. "Simone," he said when Candace showed him into my office. "Do you have a few minutes?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. My office was bright and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I decorated it myself last year, hanging vibrant abstract paintings and filling the space with plants. It was my domain, my creation, and I loved it. "What brings you here, Raymond?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. He shifted uncomfortably. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you months ago." I waited, hands folded on my desk. "I knew about the affair," Raymond said quietly. "Adrian told me about Bethany 6 months ago. He was bragging about it, Simone. Talking about how young she was, how she admired him, how she didn't question him like you did." I felt a flash of anger but kept my expression neutral. "And you didn't think to tell me?" "I told him he was being an idiot," Raymond said quickly. "I told him he had a good wife, a good life, and he was throwing it away. But he didn't listen. He said you didn't appreciate him. He said you made him feel small. So you chose to protect him instead of me." Raymond winced. "I'm not proud of it. But he's my friend. I thought maybe it would blow over. I thought he'd come to his senses." "But he didn't," I said. "No. And there's more." Raymond leaned forward. "Bethany didn't know Adrian was married. Not at first. He told her he was divorced, that the split had been amicable, that he had his own successful firm. He's been lying to her from the beginning." "I know," I said. "She found out when his credit card stopped working." "Right. But what you might not know is that Adrian has been telling people you're the problem. He's been going around to our old friends saying you kicked him out over nothing, that you're vindictive and controlling, that you trapped him in a loveless marriage." My jaw tightened. "Of course he has. I wanted you to know because I'm setting the record straight," Raymond said. "I've been calling everyone, telling them the truth. That Adrian had an affair, that you supported him financially for years while he contributed nothing, that he's lying to make himself look like the victim. Claire and I both want you to know we're on your side." Something in my chest loosened. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. "Thank you, Raymond. That means a lot." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," he said. "I should have. You deserve to know." After Raymond left, I sat alone in my office, processing everything. Adrian wasn't just leaving, he was trying to rewrite our history. He was trying to paint me as the villain in our story so he could live with his choices. But I wouldn't let him control the narrative. Not anymore. That evening, I met with Pat Henderson, my business mentor. Pat was 65, elegant and fierce. She'd built her own consulting empire from nothing and had been advising me since I was 26 and just starting out. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, and I found myself pouring out the whole story over salmon and white wine. "Men like Adrian," Pat said when I finished, "are terrified of successful women. They talk a good game about equality and partnership, but when push comes to shove, they can't handle a woman who outshines them. It threatens their identity." I tried to make myself smaller, I admitted. I'd downplay my successes. I'd let him take credit for ideas that were mine. I'd pretend I needed his advice on business decisions I'd already made. But it was never enough. "Of course it wasn't," Pat said. "Because the problem wasn't you. It was him. And nothing you did was ever going to fix his insecurity." "I wasted 15 years," I said quietly. "No," Pat corrected firmly. You invested 15 years in learning what you won't tolerate. You built a business. You became the woman you were meant to be. Those years weren't wasted. They were preparation for what comes next. And what comes next? I asked. Pat smiled. Whatever you want. That's the beauty of freedom. You get to decide. I went home that night feeling lighter again. Pat was right. I had wasted nothing. Every experience, good and bad, had shaped me into who I was now. Stronger, wiser, more certain of my worth. The house was quiet when I arrived. I'd started to enjoy the silence. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled onto my couch with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. The cushions were comfortable, the lighting perfect. Everything in this space was exactly how I wanted it. No compromises. No negotiations. Just me and my choices. My phone buzzed with an email. Against my better judgment, I checked it. Adrian had found my work email address. Simone, the message read. Please talk to me. I made a mistake. Bethany left me. I have nowhere to go. My mother is sick. I need help. Can we please discuss this like adults? I know I hurt you, but we had 15 years together. That has to count for something. I read the email 3 times. Part of me, the part that had loved him once, felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered his face when he told me about his true love. I remembered the condescension in his voice when he'd said Bethany got him in ways I never had. I remembered 8 months of lies. I deleted the email without responding. The next day Nina called with news. Adrian's lawyer dropped him. Apparently, Adrian couldn't pay the retainer and Chin doesn't work for free. So Adrian has no legal representation? I asked. He's representing himself now, Nina said, amusement clear in her voice. This is going to be over faster than I thought. He has no case, no money, and no lawyer. The judge will take one look at that prenup and it'll be done. When's the court date? 4 weeks, Nina said. I'll be there with you. We'll walk in, present the prenup, show evidence of his infidelity, and walk out. You'll be divorced and free before lunch. 4 weeks. 1 month until my marriage was officially over. I should have felt sad, I thought. I should have felt something other than this calm anticipation. But all I felt was ready. Ready to close this chapter. Ready to start fresh. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I redecorated. I hired painters to come in and change the bedroom from the neutral beige Adrian had insisted on to a vibrant turquoise. I bought new bedding in bright coral and yellow. I hung new artwork. I removed every trace of Adrian from that room and made it mine. The living room got similar treatment. Out went the boring brown furniture. In came a jewel-toned blue sectional and emerald green accent chairs. I bought fresh flowers for every room and opened all the curtains to let in natural light. By Sunday evening, my house looked completely different. Bright, cheerful, full of life. It looked like me. Candace came over to see the changes and whistled when she walked in. This is incredible. It doesn't even look like the same house. That's the point, I said. New life, new look. We ordered pizza and sat on my new couch, drinking wine and watching romantic comedies. During a commercial break, Candace turned to me with a serious expression. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you miss him at all? Even a little bit? I thought about it honestly. I miss who I thought he was. I miss the man I married, the one who said we'd build a life together. But that man never really existed. He was a fantasy I created. The real Adrian? No. I don't miss him at all. Good, Candace said. Because you deserve so much better. I'm starting to believe that, I admitted. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I'd started ignoring those, but Candace grabbed the phone before I could stop her. Ooh, it's a text, she said, reading. From Margaret, Adrian's mother. She says Adrian is living on her couch and she can't afford to support him. She wants to know if you'd reconsider helping with her medication. I took the phone and read the message. It was pleading, desperate. But it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I typed back, Margaret, I'm sorry you're in this position. But Adrian is a 40-year-old man. He needs to take care of himself and his family. I wish you both well, but I cannot and will not provide financial support. Please do not contact me again. I hit send and blocked that number too. Cold, Candace said, but she was smiling. Necessary, I corrected. I spent 5 years supporting that family. It's someone else's turn now. That night, alone in my newly decorated bedroom, I lay in my coral and yellow sheets and stared at the turquoise walls. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 weeks ago, quietly chopping vegetables while her husband announced he was leaving her for someone real. That woman felt like a stranger now. That woman had been so afraid of being alone that she tolerated being lonely in her own marriage. That woman had believed she needed a man to be complete. But I didn't need Adrian. I didn't need anyone. I had myself and I was enough. For the first time in years, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. The third week after Adrian left started with a surprise visit to my office. I was in the middle of a conference call with a client when Candace burst into my office, her expression somewhere between amused and alarmed. "Adrian's here," she mouthed silently. "In the lobby. Security is keeping him there." I held up one finger, finished my call professionally, then sat back in my chair. "Tell security I will not see him. If he doesn't leave voluntarily, they should call the police for trespassing." Candace grinned and left. 10 minutes later she returned. "He left. But not before causing a scene. Apparently he was yelling about how you're ruining his life and he just needs 5 minutes to talk to you." Everyone in the lobby heard it. I groaned. "Perfect. That's exactly the kind of attention I need at my place of business." "Actually," Candace said, pulling out her phone, "one of the security guards filmed it. Adrian comes across looking completely unhinged. If he tries to claim you're the unreasonable one, we've got proof otherwise." She showed me the video. Adrian, looking disheveled in wrinkled clothes I'd bought him, gesturing wildly while security guards tried to calm him down. "She's my wife," he was saying. "I have a right to see her. She's stealing from me. This is all my money she's spending." His money. The audacity would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. "Send me that video," I told Candace. "I'll forward it to Nina." The letters started arriving the next day. Long, handwritten letters that Adrian dropped off at my office since he couldn't get past security. Candace collected them and brought them to me in a stack. "Should I even read these?" I asked, looking at the pile. "Might be useful for the divorce proceedings," Candace suggested. Evidence of his state of mind. I opened the first one. It started with, "My dearest Simone," and went on for 3 pages about how he'd made a terrible mistake. How Bethany had only wanted him for his money, money that turned out not to exist. How he understood now what he'd thrown away. How if I'd just give him another chance, he'd prove he could be the husband I deserved. The second letter was angrier. It accused me of being cruel and heartless. It said I was punishing him just because I could, that I was using my money as a weapon. It claimed I'd always been controlling and this was just more proof of my true nature. The third letter was desperate. It begged. It pleaded. It promised anything if I just talked to him. I read all 12 letters that had been delivered. They swung between apologetic, angry, and desperate so quickly it gave me emotional whiplash just reading them. This was the man I'd been married to for 15 years, and I was only now seeing how unstable he truly was. "These are going straight to Nina," I told Candace. "Every single one." That afternoon, Margaret called from yet another number. This time I answered, curious what she'd say. "Simone, please," she started immediately. "You have to help Adrian. He's falling apart. He's depressed, he won't eat, he can't find work. You're killing him with this coldness." "I'm not killing anyone," I said calmly. "Adrian made his choices. He decided our marriage was over. I'm simply respecting that decision." "But he wants you back now," Margaret protested. "He realizes he was wrong. Can't you forgive him? Marriages go through rough patches. This doesn't have to be the end. Margaret, your son had an affair for 8 months. He told me he found his true love. He asked for a divorce. I didn't make those choices. He did. And now he has to live with the consequences." "He made a mistake," she insisted. "Yes, he did. And I hope he learns from it. But he won't learn if people keep bailing him out. You're not helping him by coddling him. You're just enabling him to never take responsibility for his actions." "You've changed," Margaret said, her voice cold. "You used to be kind." "I'm still kind," I replied. "But I'm also done being a doormat. There's a difference." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from doubt. From anger that they thought they could manipulate me into taking Adrian back just because his life was falling apart without my support. That evening, I met Nina for dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. She'd reviewed all the letters and was practically gleeful about them. "These are perfect," she said, tapping the folder she'd brought. "They show a pattern of harassment. They prove he's emotionally unstable. And the angry ones actually threaten you in subtle ways. This strengthens our case significantly." "I don't think he'll actually hurt me," I said. "He's not violent." "Maybe not physically," Nina agreed. "But emotional abuse is still abuse. And these letters show he's trying to manipulate you into taking him back by alternating between love bombing and intimidation. It's textbook." We ordered pasta and wine and I tried to relax. But part of me was still on edge, waiting for Adrian's next move. It came 2 days later. This time he showed up at my house. I was home alone on a Saturday afternoon reorganizing my home office, when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Adrian standing on my porch. He looked terrible. His hair was messy, he hadn't shaved in days, and his clothes looked like he'd slept in them. I didn't open the door. "Simone, I know you're in there," he called out. "Please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I pulled out my phone and called the police. Then I called Nina. "Stay inside," Nina instructed. "Don't engage with him at all. The police will handle it." Adrian knocked again, harder this time. "Simone, this is ridiculous. I'm your husband. We need to talk about this." "Ex-husband?" I said loudly through the door. "And the police are on their way. You need to leave my property." "You called the cops on me?" His voice went from pleading to angry in an instant. "Are you serious right now? I just want to talk." "You're trespassing," I said. "Leave now or you'll be arrested." "This is my house too," Adrian shouted. "You can't just kick me out and act like I don't exist." "This is my house," I corrected. "My name on the deed. My money that paid for it. And you lost any right to be here when you decided to cheat on me." The police arrived 10 minutes later. I watched through the window as 2 officers talked to Adrian. He was gesturing animatedly, probably telling them his version of events. One of the officers walked to my door and I let him in. "Ma'am, he says he's your husband and this is a civil matter," the officer said. "He's my soon-to-be ex-husband," I explained. "We're currently in divorce proceedings. He moved out 3 weeks ago. I've changed the locks. He has no right to be here and I've asked him multiple times to leave. I have documentation of harassment." I pulled up the security video from my office on my phone and showed him. The officer's expression hardened. "We'll instruct him to leave. If he comes back, we can arrest him for trespassing. Would you like to file a restraining order?" I thought about it. Did I really need that? But then I remembered the letters, the showing up at my work, the refusal to accept boundaries. "Yes," I said. "I would." The officer gave me the information I'd need and told me to contact the courthouse on Monday. Then he went back outside. I watched as he spoke more firmly to Adrian this time. Adrian's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated. Part of me felt bad for him. But a bigger part of me felt relieved when he finally got in his car and drove away. Nina arrived 30 minutes later. "You did the right thing," she said immediately. "That restraining order will protect you and it'll also look good in court. It shows you're the victim here, not him." "I hate that it came to this," I admitted. "I never thought Adrian would be this person." "Crisis reveals character," Nina said. "Adrian's true self is coming out now that the comfortable life you provided is gone. This is who he really is when things don't go his way." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Adrian's voice outside my door, pleading and angry by turns. I kept thinking about the man I'd married and how different he'd been from the man shouting on my porch today. Or had he always been this way? Had I just been too in love to see it? Around midnight, my phone buzzed with an email. Adrian again, from a new email address I'd have to block. "You've won," the email said. "I have nothing left. No wife, no money, no career, no dignity. I hope you're happy with what you've done to me. I hope you can sleep at night knowing you destroyed a man who only ever loved you." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I typed back one sentence. "You destroyed yourself." I hit send and then blocked that email address too. Then I got up, made myself chamomile tea and sat in my bright living room with all the lights on. I looked around at the space I'd created. The beautiful furniture, the vibrant colors, the plants and artwork that reflected my taste. This was mine. All of it. And I'd worked hard for it. I'd built it. I'd earned it. Adrian hadn't destroyed anything. He'd only removed himself from my life. And that, I was beginning to realize, was the greatest gift he could have given me. I went to bed that night not with fear or sadness, but with determination. I would get through this. I would get my restraining order. I would finalize my divorce. And I would move on with my life. Adrian could either figure himself out or not. But either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Monday morning I filed for a restraining order. The courthouse was busy, filled with people navigating their own legal problems. As I sat in the waiting room, I thought about how I'd never imagined I'd be one of these people. But here I was, and I was handling it. The judge reviewed my evidence. The security video, the letters, the showing up at my house. She granted the order without hesitation. "Ms. Bradford," she said, "your ex-husband needs to stay at least 500 feet away from you, your home, and your place of business. If he violates this order, he'll be arrested immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, I said. Thank you. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt something shift inside me. Adrian couldn't come near me now. I was protected. Safe. Free. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called a travel agent. I want to go somewhere beautiful, I told her. Somewhere warm and relaxing. Somewhere I can think. When were you thinking? The agent asked. This weekend, I said. Is that too soon? For you? Never. I could hear the smile in her voice. Let me find you something perfect. 2 days later, I was on a plane to the Bahamas. I'd taken a week off work, something I rarely did. Candace was handling everything at the office, and Nina had assured me nothing would happen with the divorce while I was gone. Go, Nina had said when I'd called to tell her my plans. Heal. Relax. Remember who you are outside of being Adrian's wife. The resort was beautiful. White sand beaches, crystal blue water, palm trees swaying in the breeze. My room had a balcony overlooking the ocean. I stood there my first evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, and felt tears start to fall. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Freedom tears. For the first time in 15 years, I was completely alone. No one needed anything from me. No one was depending on me. I could just exist, just breathe, just be. I spent my days on the beach, reading books I'd been meaning to read for years. I got massages. I ate meals slowly, savoring every bite. I took long walks along the shore, letting the waves wash over my feet. I wore a bright red bikini I'd never had the confidence to wear before, and I didn't care who looked or what they thought. I was free. On my third day there, I met a woman named Helen. She was about 60, sitting alone at the beach bar with a margarita and a mystery novel. Something about her radiated peace. Mind if I sit? I asked. Please do, Helen said, gesturing to the stool next to her. I'm Helen. Simone. We started talking the way strangers do on vacation. Helen told me she was recently retired, celebrating her freedom from a 30-year career in teaching. She was traveling alone because her husband had passed away 2 years ago. It's the first time I've traveled alone, Helen admitted. I was terrified at first, but now, I love it. I go where I want, eat what I want, do what I want. There's something beautiful about that. I'm on my first solo trip too, I said. Getting divorced. Ah, Helen said knowingly. The freedom trip. How are you doing with it? Better than I expected, I admitted. I thought I'd be sadder. But mostly I just feel relieved. Helen nodded. That's how you know you made the right choice. When the relief outweighs the grief. We spent the afternoon talking. Helen told me about her marriage, the good parts and the hard parts. She told me how her husband's death had been devastating but also, in some strange way, liberating. She'd discovered parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. We lose ourselves in relationships sometimes, Helen said. Especially women. We mold ourselves to fit someone else's needs. And then one day we wake up and realize we don't recognize the person in the mirror. That's exactly how I felt, I said. I was so busy being the perfect supportive wife that I forgot to be Simone. So now you get to remember, Helen said, smiling. Now you get to figure out who Simone really is. What she wants. What makes her happy. And honey, that's a gift. That conversation stayed with me for the rest of the trip. I thought about the woman I'd been before Adrian. Young, ambitious, full of dreams. I'd achieved so many of those dreams professionally, but personally, I'd settled. I'd accepted less than I deserved because I thought that's what love required. But real love shouldn't require you to become less. Real love should celebrate who you are and encourage you to become even more. I spent a lot of time thinking about my marriage. Not with anger or bitterness, but with clarity. I could see now all the ways I'd accommodated Adrian's insecurities. How I'd downplayed my successes to make him feel better. How I'd taken on all the financial burden without complaint. How I'd slowly made myself smaller and smaller to make space for his fragile ego. No more. On my last night in the Bahamas, I sat on my balcony and wrote in the journal I'd brought. I wrote about everything I wanted for my next chapter. A partner who celebrated my success instead of resenting it. A relationship built on mutual respect and support. Someone who added to my life instead of draining from it. But more than that, I wrote about what I wanted for myself. To keep growing my business. To travel more. To reconnect with old friends. To try new things. To live boldly and without apology. I wrote, I am enough. I have always been enough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve me. When I flew home the following week, I felt different. Lighter. Clearer. Stronger. Candace picked me up from the airport. "You look amazing," she said immediately. "Like glowing." "I feel amazing," I told her honestly. "I feel like myself again." The house felt welcoming when I walked in. My bright, colorful space that reflected who I really was. I unpacked, did laundry and settled back into my routine. But this time, I did it with joy instead of obligation. Work felt different too. I threw myself into projects with renewed energy. I pitched ideas I'd been too cautious to pitch before. I took risks, and they paid off. My firm landed 2 major clients in the week after I returned, and revenue projections for the year looked better than ever. I started going to a therapist. Dr. Lauren Martinez was recommended by Pat, and from our first session I knew I'd made the right choice. She helped me process everything that had happened. Not just the divorce, but the years of emotional labor I'd done to keep my marriage afloat. "You were in a relationship with someone who needed you to fail so he could feel successful," Dr. Martinez explained during one session. "That's not a partnership. That's a hostage situation." The words hit hard but felt true. I had been a hostage in a way. Trapped by my own kindness, my own desire to be a good wife, my own belief that love meant sacrifice. "Real love," Dr. Martinez continued, "doesn't require you to sacrifice your dreams. Real love celebrates them." I went home from that session and did something I'd been putting off. I updated all my social media profiles, removing every trace of Adrian. I changed my relationship status to single. I posted a photo from the Bahamas with a simple caption, "New chapter." The responses were overwhelming. Friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out to offer support. Old colleagues congratulated me on my bravery. And a few women messaged privately to tell me they were inspired by my strength, that they were in similar situations and seeing me stand up for myself gave them courage to do the same. I realized then that my story wasn't just about me. It was about every woman who'd ever made herself smaller for a man. Every woman who'd ever sacrificed her dreams for someone else's ego. Every woman who'd ever wondered if she was asking for too much by wanting to be celebrated instead of tolerated. We all deserved better. And maybe by living my truth I could help other women realize they deserved better too. 2 weeks after I returned from the Bahamas, Nina called with news. "The divorce is finalized," she said. "The judge signed the papers. You're officially single." I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and let that sink in. Single. Free. What? "How do you feel?" Nina asked. I smiled, looking around my beautiful, bright home. "I feel good. Really, really good." "Good," Nina said. "Because you deserve to feel good. You deserve to be happy. And now nothing is stopping you." That night, I opened a bottle of champagne and toasted to myself. To 15 years of learning what I wouldn't tolerate. To the courage to walk away. To the strength to stand alone. To the future I was creating, one brave choice at a time. I was no longer Mrs. Bradford, defined by my relationship to someone else. I was just Simone. And that was more than enough. 3 months post-divorce, my life had settled into a rhythm I actually enjoyed. I woke up early, worked out, went to my office where I was doing the best work of my career, and came home to a house that felt like a sanctuary. On weekends, I saw friends, explored the city, and did things I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was managing Adrian's needs. I took a painting class. I joined a book club. I started learning French because I'd always wanted to visit Paris and actually speak the language. Life was full and rich, and I was genuinely happy. Alone, yes, but not lonely. Then I went to a business conference in Chicago. The conference was focused on innovative marketing strategies, and my firm had sponsored one of the main panels. I gave a talk on building authentic brand relationships, and afterward, several people approached me with questions and business cards. It was energizing, being surrounded by people who respected my expertise and wanted to learn from me. During the lunch break, I was standing in line at the buffet when someone behind me said, "Simone Bradford? Is that really you?" I turned and found myself looking at a familiar face. It took me a moment to place him, and then it clicked. Trent Morrison? Trent had been 2 years ahead of me in high school. We'd been in drama club together, and I'd had a small crush on him back then. He'd been kind and funny, always making people laugh during rehearsals. We'd lost touch after he graduated, and I hadn't thought about him in years. Now, standing in front of me, he'd grown into a handsome man. He was tall, with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. He wore a blue suit that fit him perfectly. "I can't believe it's you," Trent said, grinning. "How long has it been?" 20 years. "Something like that," I said, smiling back. "What brings you to this conference?" "I'm an architect," he explained. "My firm specializes in sustainable commercial buildings. I'm speaking on a panel this afternoon about eco-friendly design. An architect. My first instinct was to tense up, memories of Adrian flooding back. But then I remembered, not all architects were like Adrian. Not all men were like Adrian. That's impressive, I said. I'd love to hear your talk. And I'd love to catch up properly, Trent said. Are you free for dinner tonight? I hesitated for only a moment. Then I thought about Dr. Martinez telling me it was okay to be open to new experiences. Sure. That sounds nice. We exchanged numbers and made plans to meet at a restaurant near the conference hotel. For the rest of the afternoon, I found myself distracted, thinking about seeing Trent again. It wasn't a date, I told myself. Just two old friends catching up. But when I got ready that evening, I found myself choosing my outfit more carefully than usual. I wore a green dress that I knew looked good on me, and I left my hair down in natural curls. Trent was already at the restaurant when I arrived, and he stood when he saw me. You look beautiful, he said simply, and I felt a flutter in my stomach I hadn't felt in years. Over dinner we caught up on everything. Trent told me about his journey from high school to architecture school to starting his own firm 5 years ago. He was divorced, he told me. His marriage had ended 4 years ago when they both realized they wanted different things out of life. It was amicable, Trent said. We're still friends actually. She remarried last year and I'm happy for her. I told him about my divorce, keeping it brief. My ex-husband had an affair. It ended badly. But I'm doing well now. I can see that, Trent said, and there was genuine warmth in his eyes. You seem happy. Confident. You've built something impressive with your firm. We talked about our work, our dreams, our lives. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and genuine interest in each other's stories. Trent asked questions and actually listened to my answers. He seemed impressed by my success, not threatened by it. I always knew you'd do something amazing, Trent said at one point. Even in high school you had this energy about you. This determination. Did you really? I asked, surprised. Absolutely. I actually had a crush on you back then, Trent admitted, looking a bit embarrassed. But you were dating that football player, so I kept it to myself. I laughed. I had no idea. You should have said something. And risk rejection from Simone Bradford? No way, Trent said, grinning. I was not that brave at 17. The dinner stretched into dessert and coffee, and then into walking around downtown Chicago, looking at the architecture and talking about everything and nothing. When Trent finally walked me back to my hotel, I realized 3 hours had passed and it had felt like minutes. I had a really great time tonight, Trent said at the hotel entrance. Can I see you again? Maybe when we're back home? I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. We exchanged a brief hug and I felt something stir inside me. Not the desperate, needy feeling I'd had with Adrian. Something calmer, warmer, more certain. Over the next few weeks, Trent and I texted almost daily. Just casual conversations about our days, funny things we'd seen, recommendations for books and restaurants. It was easy and comfortable. We went on our first official date 2 weeks after the conference. Trent took me to an art gallery opening, and we spent hours looking at paintings and sculptures, discussing what we liked and why. Then we had dinner at a small Italian place where the pasta was homemade and the conversation never lagged. Tell me more about your business, Trent said over wine. What's the best part of what you do? I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't with anyone in years. I told him about the satisfaction of helping a small business grow, of creating campaigns that actually worked, of mentoring young women who wanted to break into marketing. That's incredible, Trent said, and the admiration in his voice was genuine. You've created something that matters. That's what good work should be about. What about you? I asked. What made you choose sustainable architecture? Trent's face lit up as he talked about designing buildings that worked with the environment instead of against it. About creating spaces that were beautiful but also responsible. About his dream of revolutionizing how commercial buildings were constructed. I listened to his passion and realized how different this felt from conversations with Adrian. Adrian had talked about his architecture dreams, but always with an undercurrent of bitterness, always focused on how the world didn't recognize his genius. Trent talked about his work with joy and purpose, focused on the impact he could make rather than the recognition he deserved. Our second date was a comedy show. Our third was a hike along a scenic trail followed by brunch. Our fourth was cooking dinner together at my house, where Trent insisted on doing half the work and actually knew his way around a kitchen. My ex-wife taught me, he explained when I commented on his knife skills. She said if I was going to eat her food, I needed to learn to help make it. Best lesson she ever taught me. I smiled at how he could talk about his ex-wife with fondness instead of resentment. It spoke to his character. After dinner, we sat on my couch talking, and Trent noticed the framed photo of my business team on the wall. That's from our 5-year anniversary celebration, I explained. We just landed our biggest client. You should be proud, Trent said. Really proud. What you've built is exceptional. Thank you, I said, and felt myself relaxing further into this new dynamic. Being with someone who celebrated my success instead of resenting it felt revolutionary. As the evening wound down, Trent reached over and gently took my hand. Simone, I really like you. I want to keep seeing you, keep getting to know you. But I want to make sure you're ready for this. I know you've been through a lot. I appreciated his thoughtfulness. I like you too, I said honestly. And I think I'm ready. Or as ready as anyone can be. I'm done letting my past dictate my future. Trent smiled and squeezed my hand. Good. Because I think we could have something really special here. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope that someone would finally see my worth, but the calm certainty that I'd found someone who already did. Over the next month, Trent and I continued dating. We took things slowly, which I appreciated. There was no pressure, no rush. Just two people enjoying each other's company and seeing where things might go. Trent met Candace and Nina, who both gave him their approval. He's good for you, Nina said after we all had dinner together. I can see it in the way you smile now. It's different. Genuine. Candace agreed. He treats you like you're valuable. Like your time and attention are gifts, not obligations. That's what you deserve. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, was more cautious. Just make sure you're not jumping into something new to avoid processing the old, she warned. Take your time. Make sure this is about him, not about proving you're over Adrian. I thought about that carefully. Was I dating Trent to prove something? Or because I genuinely enjoyed his company? After some honest reflection, I realized it was the latter. Trent made me laugh. He challenged me intellectually. He supported my work. He respected my boundaries. And most importantly, being with him felt easy in all the ways my marriage to Adrian had felt hard. 4 months into dating, Trent suggested we take a trip together. There's this architectural conference in Italy, he said. Rome specifically. I'd love to go, and I'd love for you to come with me. Separate rooms, of course, if you're not ready for anything else. I just want to spend more time with you. Italy. I'd always wanted to go to Italy. Adrian and I had talked about it, but it had never happened. There had always been some excuse, usually financial. The irony of Adrian claiming we couldn't afford a trip while I was paying for everything wasn't lost on me. I'd love to, I told Trent. 2 weeks later we were in Rome. The city was everything I'd dreamed it would be. Ancient ruins, stunning architecture, incredible food. Trent showed me buildings he admired, explaining the history and design principles. I shared marketing ideas for some of the businesses we passed, and he listened with genuine interest. On our 3rd night there, we had dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Colosseum. The sun was setting, painting everything in golden light. Trent reached across the table and took my hand. I'm falling for you, Simone, he said quietly. I want you to know that. I'm not trying to rush you or pressure you. I just wanted to be honest about how I feel. I looked at this man who'd come back into my life at exactly the right time. Who treated me with kindness and respect. Who celebrated my success instead of resenting it. Who made me laugh and think and feel alive. I'm falling for you too, I admitted. And it felt right. Not scary or overwhelming. Just right. That night, we didn't stay in separate rooms. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly seen and cherished by someone I cared about. While my life was blossoming, Adrian's was crumbling. I knew this not because I was keeping tabs on him, but because mutual acquaintances couldn't help but share updates. Raymond called one afternoon to tell me Adrian had lost yet another job. Margaret left me a voicemail begging me to reconsider helping her son. Even Candace occasionally forwarded me social media posts from people we both knew, showing Adrian at rock bottom. I didn't take pleasure in his suffering. But I didn't feel guilty about it either. This was the consequence of his choices and he needed to face them. According to Raymond, Adrian had tried to restart his architecture career after we separated. He'd applied to several firms, but his reputation had preceded him. Word had gotten out about why our marriage ended, about how he'd been living off his wife's money for years while claiming to have a successful business. No one wanted to hire someone with that kind of character. He's working as a draftsman now, Raymond told me. Entry-level work. The pay is terrible. He had to move in with his mother because he couldn't afford his own place. I thanked Raymond for the update but made it clear I had no intention of getting involved. Adrian is a grown man, I said. He needs to figure this out himself. I know, Raymond replied. I just thought you should know. He's been bitter about everything, blaming you for his problems. Of course he is, I said without surprise. Taking responsibility would require him to admit he was wrong. Adrian's never been good at that. A few weeks later, Candace showed me an Instagram post from someone I vaguely knew from college. It was a screenshot of a dating app profile. Adrian's profile. The bio made me shake my head. It said he was a successful architect, divorced, looking for someone genuine who valued intelligence over material things. The photos were old, from when we were still together, and he still looked put together. He's still lying, Candace said, reading over my shoulder. Still pretending to be something he's not. Some people never learn, I replied. But privately, I felt a pang of pity for whatever woman swiped right on that profile. She'd be in for a rude awakening. The real breaking point came when Adrian saw photos of me with Trent on social media. I'd posted a picture from Italy. Trent and I at the Trevi fountain, both smiling, his arm around my waist. The caption was simple: exploring Rome with good company. It was innocent, happy, real. Apparently, Adrian had been checking my social media obsessively. Within an hour of posting the photo, my phone started buzzing with calls from blocked numbers. I didn't answer. Then the email started. You've moved on already? The first email read. It's only been 4 months and you're parading a new man around like our marriage meant nothing? This is who you really are, Simone. Cold and heartless. I deleted it without responding. The next email was worse. I gave you 15 years of my life. I supported you when you were starting your business. I believed in you. And this is how you repay me? By replacing me like I never mattered. The irony of him claiming he'd supported me was almost funny. But the emails kept coming, each one more unhinged than the last. He accused me of cheating on him during our marriage. He called Trent derogatory names. He claimed I'd been planning to leave him all along. I forwarded every email to Nina. He's violating the restraining order by contacting you, she said grimly. Even via email. I'm documenting all of this. If it continues, we can have him arrested. Let me try blocking all possible contact methods first, I said. I wasn't eager to send Adrian to jail despite everything. I just wanted him to leave me alone. But Adrian wasn't done. He found Trent's business website and left a negative review, claiming Trent had stolen his wife and destroyed his family. Trent handled it with grace, having the review removed and not letting it affect him. This guy needs help, Trent said after I explained the situation. Real help. Professional help. I know, I agreed. But he has to want it. And right now, he's too busy playing the victim to admit he needs it. The harassment escalated when Adrian showed up at one of my client meetings. I was at a restaurant having lunch with a potential client when I saw him walk in. He spotted me immediately and started walking toward my table. I excused myself and met him halfway, keeping my voice low but firm. You need to leave. No. You're violating the restraining order. I just want to talk, Adrian said, his voice breaking. Please, Simone. Just give me 5 minutes. No, I said. You've had months to say whatever you needed to say. You sent dozens of emails. It's over, Adrian. You need to accept that and move on. How can I move on when you've destroyed my life? Adrian said, his voice rising. People were starting to stare. You took everything from me. You took everything from yourself, I corrected. When you decided to cheat on me. When you decided your ego was more important than our marriage. When you decided to blame me for your failures instead of taking responsibility for your choices. Adrian's face flushed red. You always did think you were better than me. Superior Simone with her successful business and her perfect life. You never appreciated what I brought to the marriage. What did you bring? I asked, genuinely curious. Because from where I'm standing, I paid for everything, supported your dreams, covered your mother's expenses, and got cheated on for my trouble. So please enlighten me. What exactly did you contribute? Adrian had no answer. He just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. That's what I thought, I said. Now leave before I call the police. Again. I turned and walked back to my table, where my potential client was watching with wide eyes. I'm so sorry about that, I said, sitting down. Ex-husband. We're divorced. He's having trouble accepting it. No apology necessary, the client said. That took guts, standing up to him like that. I respect that. Shows strength of character. We finished our lunch meeting and she signed on as a client. Adrian's attempt to disrupt my business had actually strengthened it. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 days later, Nina called. Adrian was arrested, she said. What? I sat up straight. What happened? He showed up at your office building again. Security called the police. He violated the restraining order multiple times now, so they arrested him. He spent the night in jail. I sat with that information trying to figure out how I felt. Sad that it had come to this. Relieved that maybe now he'd finally leave me alone. Frustrated that a grown man couldn't handle rejection with any semblance of dignity. What happens now? I asked. He's been released on bail, Nina explained. But there's a court hearing in 2 weeks. The judge will decide if additional consequences are necessary. I'll be there to represent your interests. Will I have to see him? Probably not. This is a criminal matter now, not civil. You'll likely just need to provide a statement. The thought of Adrian in handcuffs in a cell should have bothered me more than it did. But honestly, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, nothing. He was a stranger now, someone I used to know who'd made poor choices and was facing the consequences. Margaret called me that afternoon, crying. How could you do this to him? He's in jail because of you. My son is in jail. Your son is in jail because he violated a court order, I replied calmly. Multiple times. I asked him repeatedly to leave me alone. He chose not to listen. These are his consequences, not mine. He's suffering, Margaret sobbed. Can't you see that? I can, I said. And I wish him no ill will. But Margaret, Adrian needs to hit rock bottom before he'll change. You bailing him out, me taking him back, everyone making excuses for him. That's not helping. That's enabling. If you really love your son, you'll stop protecting him from the consequences of his actions and let him learn. Margaret hung up on me. I felt bad for her, truly. It must be hard watching your child self-destruct. But it wasn't my job to save Adrian from himself. It never had been. That evening I had dinner with Trent at my place. I told him everything that had happened. He listened quietly, then pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, he said. You don't deserve it. It's okay, I replied, meaning it. It'll blow over eventually. Adrian will either get help and move on or he won't. But either way, I'm done letting it affect my life. Good, Trent said. Because you've built something beautiful here. Your business, your home, your life. Don't let someone else's bitterness dim your light. I looked at this man who supported me without trying to control me, who celebrated my strength instead of feeling threatened by it, and felt grateful. Not just for him, but for the journey that had led me here. Every painful moment with Adrian had taught me what I wouldn't accept. And now I knew exactly what I deserved. And I was never settling for less again. The final court date arrived on a bright morning in October. I'd been divorced on paper for months, but this hearing was about Adrian's contempt charges for violating the restraining order. Nina had advised me to attend to show the judge I was taking this seriously. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, my hair pulled back in a professional bun. I wanted to look composed and credible. Trent offered to come with me, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone. Nina met me outside the courthouse. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be, I replied. We walked into the courtroom together. Adrian was already there with a court-appointed lawyer, looking haggard and defeated. He'd lost weight, his suit hung loosely on his frame, and there were dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Or just exhaustion. I sat on the opposite side of the room and kept my eyes forward. Judge Helena Price entered and we all stood. She was a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression. She'd seen it all in her years on the bench, and her reputation was for being fair but firm. We're here regarding Adrian Bradford's violation of a restraining order, Judge Price began, looking over her glasses at Adrian. Mr. Bradford, you've been charged with multiple violations. How do you plead? Adrian stood shakily. Guilty, Your Honor. But I can explain. I'm not interested in explanations, Judge Price interrupted. I'm interested in facts. Did you or did you not contact Miss Simone Bradford repeatedly via email after a restraining order was issued? I did, but... Did you or did you not show up at her place of business multiple times? Yes, Your Honor, but I just wanted to. Mr. Bradford, Judge Price said sharply. A restraining order is not a suggestion. It's a legal order. You violated it knowingly and repeatedly. That shows a blatant disregard for the law and for Ms. Bradford's safety and well-being. Adrian's lawyer tried to intervene. Your Honor, my client has been under extreme emotional distress due to his divorce. Many people go through divorces, Judge Price replied. Most of them manage to do so without harassing their ex-spouses or breaking the law. Emotional distress is not an excuse for illegal behavior. She turned to Nina. Does Ms. Bradford wish to make a statement? Nina looked at me. I nodded and stood. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. I want to be clear that I take no pleasure in being here today. My marriage to Mr. Bradford ended because of his infidelity and his decision to pursue someone else. I accepted that and moved on. I've asked repeatedly for him to do the same. Instead, he's harassed me, showed up at my workplace, sent threatening emails, and refused to respect my boundaries. I don't want revenge. I just want to be left alone to live my life in peace. Judge Price nodded. Thank you, Ms. Bradford. You may sit. She looked at Adrian for a long moment. Mr. Bradford, I'm going to be blunt with you. Your behavior has been unacceptable. You had a wife who supported you financially for years. She had every right to end that support when you ended the marriage. Instead of accepting that consequence and rebuilding your life, you've spent months harassing her and blaming her for your problems. Adrian opened his mouth to speak, but Judge Price held up her hand. I'm not finished. You need to understand something. Ms. Bradford owes you nothing. She didn't destroy your life. You did that all by yourself when you chose to betray your marriage. Now you have two choices. You can accept responsibility for your actions, get professional help, and start rebuilding. Or you can continue down this path and end up in serious legal trouble. She paused, letting her words sink in. I'm sentencing you to 6 months probation. During that time, you will have absolutely no contact with Ms. Bradford. None. If you violate that probation, you will serve jail time. Additionally, you will complete 50 hours of community service and attend court-mandated therapy. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Adrian said quietly. Good. Because I don't want to see you in my courtroom again. Get help, Mr. Bradford. Take responsibility. Become the man you should have been all along. Judge Price banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. I stood, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It was really over. Adrian would leave me alone now or face serious consequences. Either way, I was free. Outside the courthouse, Nina hugged me. That went perfectly. Judge Price doesn't tolerate nonsense, and she saw right through Adrian's victim act. Thank you, I said. For everything. I couldn't have done this without you. That's what sisters are for, Nina replied. Now go live your life. Date that wonderful man of yours. Grow your business. Be happy. That's the best revenge anyway. I laughed. It's not about revenge anymore. It's just about being happy. Even better, Nina said. I went back to work feeling lighter than I had in months. The Adrian chapter was finally closed. No more court dates, no more harassment, no more looking over my shoulder wondering if he'd show up somewhere. I was free to move forward completely. That evening, Trent came over and I told him everything. He listened, then kissed my forehead. I'm proud of you. The way you handled all of this with grace and strength. You're remarkable, Simone. I just did what needed to be done, I said. That's what remarkable people do, Trent replied. They handle hard things without losing themselves in the process. Over dinner, we talked about the future. Trent had been offered a major project in California, a sustainable office building that would be his biggest commission yet. It's a 6-month project, he explained. I'd need to be out there a lot, maybe even relocate temporarily. My heart sank a little. We'd only been dating for 6 months, but already I couldn't imagine not having him in my life regularly. When would you leave? Not for a few months, Trent said. But Simone, I want to talk about something. I know we haven't been together that long, but I can't imagine doing this without you. Would you consider coming with me? Maybe opening a West Coast office for your firm. I blinked, surprised. That's a big step. I know, Trent said. And if you're not ready, I understand. We can do long distance. I just wanted you to know that I'm serious about us. About you. I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to. I thought about it. 6 months ago, I'd been trapped in a marriage that drained me. Now I had options. Freedom. A man who valued me and wanted me to be part of his life without demanding I sacrifice mine. Let me think about it, I said. I need to consider what's best for my business and my life. But I appreciate you asking. That means a lot. Take all the time you need, Trent said. I'm not going anywhere. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything. California. A new adventure. The possibility of expanding my business. More time with Trent. It was exciting and terrifying in equal measure. But maybe that's what moving forward felt like. Maybe healing wasn't about playing it safe. Maybe it was about being brave enough to embrace new possibilities, even when they scared you. I'd spent 15 years playing small for someone who never appreciated it. Maybe it was time to play big for myself. I fell asleep thinking about palm trees and ocean views and the life I could build if I just had the courage to reach for it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of decisions and planning. After several conversations with Candace and my business partners, I decided to open a West Coast satellite office for my firm. It made business sense anyway. Several of our clients had headquarters in California, and having a physical presence there would strengthen our relationships. Candace would run the main office while I split my time between both coasts. It was ambitious, maybe even crazy, but it felt right. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what someone else needed from me. "You're sure about this?" Nina asked over lunch one afternoon. She was happy for me but also protective, worried I was moving too fast with Trent. "I'm not doing this just for Trent," I explained. "I'm doing this for me. For my business. Trent is part of it, yes, but even if things didn't work out between us, this expansion makes sense. I've been thinking about it for a year anyway." Nina nodded, satisfied. "Okay. As long as you're making this choice for yourself, I support you completely." Telling Pat about my decision was easier. My mentor had always encouraged me to think bigger. "California is perfect for you," she said. "And Simone, can I say something? You've changed so much in the past year. You're confident in a way you never were when you were with Adrian. You're making bold choices. You're living your life on your terms. It's beautiful to see." Her words made me emotional. I feel like I've finally found myself again. Or maybe I've become someone new. Either way, I like who I am now. "That's all that matters," Pat said. The move happened gradually. I spent 2 weeks in California finding an office space and an apartment. Trent helped me apartment hunt, and we found a bright, modern place with a balcony overlooking the city. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that let in tons of natural light, just like my home back east. Setting up the new office was exciting. I hired 2 local employees and transferred 1 team member from the main office who'd been wanting to relocate anyway. We decorated the space with the same vibrant energy as the original office. Colorful art, lots of plants, an open floor plan that encouraged collaboration. My first month in California was busy but fulfilling. I met with clients, built new relationships, explored the city with Trent. He was working crazy hours on his project, but we still made time for each other. Dinner dates, weekend hikes, quiet mornings with coffee and conversation. What surprised me most was how natural it felt. Being with Trent was easy in ways my marriage to Adrian never had been. We supported each other's ambitions without competition or resentment. When I landed a major new client, Trent took me out to celebrate without any underlying bitterness. When his building project hit a snag, I listened and offered support without feeling drained. This was what partnership was supposed to feel like. Supportive. Energizing rather than exhausting. 6 months into my California adventure, I flew back east for a business conference. Walking through the city where I'd spent most of my adult life felt strange. Like visiting a place where a different version of me had lived. On my last day there, I decided to stop by the coffee shop near my old office. I was standing in line, checking emails on my phone, when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and found myself face to face with Adrian. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him in court. He'd gained back some weight, his clothes fit properly, and his eyes were clearer. But there was something different about him. A humility that hadn't been there before. "Simone," he said quietly, "can we talk? Just for a minute. I promise I'm not going to cause a scene." I glanced around. We were in a public place. And honestly, I was curious. 5 minutes, I agreed. We sat at a small table by the window. Adrian clasped his hands together nervously. "I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. For everything. The affair, the harassment, the way I blamed you for my own failures. I've been in therapy for months now, and I'm finally starting to see how toxic I was." I listened without interrupting. "I resented you," Adrian continued. "Your success, your confidence, your ability to build something from nothing. It made me feel small, and instead of dealing with my own insecurities, I took them out on you. I made you responsible for my happiness, and that wasn't fair." "No, it wasn't," I agreed quietly. "I wanted you to know that I'm working on myself," Adrian said. "I got a job at a decent firm. Nothing fancy, but it's honest work and I'm learning. I'm paying my own bills now, supporting my mother. I'm becoming the man I should have been all along." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted Adrian back, but because I genuinely hoped he'd find peace. "I also wanted to apologize for how I talked about you after we split," Adrian added. "I said terrible things to our friends. Made you out to be the villain. I've been reaching out to people to set the record straight. Tell them the truth about what happened. That surprised me. Why? Because you deserve that, Adrian said simply. You were a good wife, Simone. Better than I deserved. You supported me, believed in me, carried me when I couldn't carry myself. And I repaid you with betrayal and bitterness. That's on me. I need to own that. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Adrian looked at me with something like wonder. You look happy. Really happy. Is that true? It is, I said honestly. I've built something good for myself. I'm in California now, expanding my business. I'm dating someone who treats me well. I'm happy. Adrian nodded, and I saw a flash of genuine happiness in his eyes. Good. That's what you deserve. I hope he appreciates you more than I did. He does, I said. I won't take up any more of your time, Adrian said, standing. I just needed you to hear that. To know that I'm sorry and I'm trying to do better. Adrian, I said before he could leave. I forgive you. He stopped, eyes widening. You do. I do, I confirmed. Not because you deserve it necessarily, but because I don't want to carry anger anymore. You hurt me and that's a fact. But holding on to that pain only hurts me. So yes, I forgive you. And I hope you find whatever you're looking for. Adrian's eyes got misty. Thank you. That means more than you know. He left and I sat there for a few more minutes processing the encounter. I'd expected to feel angry or bitter seeing him. Instead, I just felt nothing. He was a chapter of my life that had closed. The ending had been painful, but it had led me to where I was now. And where I was now was pretty wonderful. I texted Trent, just ran into Adrian. I'll tell you about it later. But I'm okay. More than okay, actually. His response came quickly, proud of you. Can't wait to hear about it. Love you. Love you. We'd said it for the first time a month ago and it still made my heart flutter. I finished my coffee and headed back to my hotel, feeling lighter than I had in years. The anger I'd been carrying, the resentment, the hurt, it was all fading. Not because Adrian had apologized, but because I'd chosen to let it go. Healing, I realized, wasn't about waiting for the person who hurt you to make things right. It was about deciding you were worth more than the pain they'd caused. It was about choosing to move forward even when the past tried to pull you back. I flew back to California the next day and threw myself back into work and life with Trent. My business was thriving. Both offices were exceeding revenue projections. I'd been featured in a major business magazine as one of the top female entrepreneurs to watch. Everything was falling into place. One evening, Trent and I were having dinner at my apartment. He'd cooked, insisting I relax after a long week. We were sitting on my balcony watching the sunset when he took my hand. Simone, I want to talk to you about something. My heart skipped. His tone was serious but not worrying. Okay. I've been thinking about the future, Trent said. Our future. I know we've only been together for a little over a year, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're brilliant, strong, independent, kind. You challenge me to be better. You support my dreams while building your own. You're everything I ever hoped to find in a partner. He pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box. I'm not asking you to marry me, Trent said quickly, seeing my eyes widen. Not yet. We're both too smart to rush into that. But I want you to know that I'm serious about us. About building a life together. This is a promise ring. A promise that when the time is right, when we've both had time to be sure, I want to spend my life with you. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver band with a small sapphire. It was beautiful and understated, just like Trent. Will you accept this? Will you accept my promise? Trent asked. I felt tears spring to my eyes, but they were happy tears. Tears of joy and relief and hope. Yes, I said. Yes, I will. Trent slipped the ring onto my right hand, and we kissed as the sun set over the city. Felt like a new beginning. Not just for me but for both of us. That night, lying in bed next to Trent, I thought about how far I'd come. A year and a half ago, I'd been standing in my kitchen while my husband told me he'd found his true love. I thought my world was ending. Instead, it had been the beginning of something better. I'd found myself. I'd built something stronger. I'd learned what I deserved and refused to accept anything less. And now, I had a future full of possibilities stretching out before me. A thriving business. A man who loved and respected me. Freedom to make choices based on what I wanted, not what someone else needed. I thought divorce would break me. Instead, it had freed me to become who I was always meant to be. And that was worth everything. 1 year later, I stood in the main conference room of my company's headquarters, looking out at the assembled team. We were celebrating 5 years since I'd opened the California office, and what an incredible 5 years it had been. Both offices were thriving. We'd landed several Fortune 500 companies as clients. Our revenue had tripled. Most importantly, we'd created a company culture that valued creativity, work-life balance, and mutual respect. I'd built something I was genuinely proud of. Thank you all for being here, I said to the team. When I started this company 12 years ago, I never imagined it would grow like this. But none of it would have been possible without each of you. Your dedication, creativity, and hard work have made this success possible. After the celebration, Candace pulled me aside. You know what's amazing? Watching you bloom like this. You're not the same person you were 3 years ago. No, I agreed. I'm not. I'm better. Later that evening, Trent and I had dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate. We'd been engaged for 6 months now, properly engaged with a wedding planned for next spring. We were taking our time, doing things right, building a foundation based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. I'm proud of you, Trent said, raising his glass. Not just for today's success, but for everything you've accomplished. You're incredible, Simone. We're incredible, I corrected. You've been right there with me, supporting me every step of the way. That means everything. As we ate and talked about our upcoming wedding, about the honeymoon we were planning to Croatia, about the future we were building together, I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what happiness felt like. Not the desperate clinging to someone who didn't appreciate you, but the calm certainty of being with someone who did. The next morning, I had breakfast at my favorite coffee shop in the neighborhood where I now lived. California had become home in a way I never expected. I still traveled back east frequently for business, but this was where my heart was now. I was scrolling through emails when someone approached my table. I looked up and felt my stomach drop slightly. It was Adrian. He looked healthy and put together, wearing business casual clothes that actually fit him properly. But more than his appearance, his demeanor was different. There was no anger, no desperation, none of the bitter energy he'd carried before. Simone, he said. I hope I'm not interrupting. I saw you sitting here and wanted to say hello. Is that okay? Sure, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. My heart rate had barely elevated. He was just another person now, not the source of pain and disappointment he'd once been. I'm actually living out here now, Adrian explained. I got hired by a firm in San Francisco. They're doing some really interesting work with sustainable materials. It's exactly the kind of architecture I always wanted to do. That's great, I said, and I meant it. I'm glad things worked out for you. They did. It took me a while and I had to eat a lot of humble pie, but I'm in a good place now. He paused. I heard you're engaged. Congratulations. He's a lucky man. I'm a lucky woman, I replied. Trent is wonderful. Adrian nodded. I bet he is. You deserve someone wonderful. You always did. I was just too insecure to appreciate what I had. We both learned a lot from that marriage, I said diplomatically. Sometimes things need to fall apart so better things can come together. That's a kind way to put it, Adrian said with a slight smile. Look, I won't keep you. I just wanted to say that I'm glad we're both doing well. No hard feelings on my end anymore. Just gratitude for the time we had and hope that we're both where we need to be now. No hard feelings here either, I said. And I realized it was true. The man sitting across from me was essentially a stranger. The hurt he'd caused felt like it had happened to a different person in a different lifetime. After Adrian left, I sat for a moment reflecting on the encounter. 3 years ago, seeing him would have stirred up all kinds of emotions. Anger, hurt, betrayal. Now, nothing but mild curiosity and genuine hope that he'd found his way. That, I realized, was the truest sign of healing. When you could encounter someone who once broke your heart and feel nothing but indifference and goodwill. When the story of your past no longer had power over your present. I finished my coffee and headed to my office. The day was full of client meetings and strategy sessions. My assistant, a bright young woman named Alicia, had everything organized perfectly. The California office had grown to 15 employees, all of whom I'd personally hired and mentored. During lunch, I video called Nina. My sister was still back east, thriving in her law practice. We'd grown even closer over the past few years, bonded by everything we'd been through together. How's wedding planning? Nina asked. Good. Stressful but good. I'm thinking we need to finalize the guest list this week. Send it to me. I'll review it, Nina offered. Then she paused. Can I ask you something? Do you ever regret how everything went down with Adrian? Wish you'd handled things differently? I thought about it honestly. No. I regret that I stayed as long as I did, maybe. But the way it ended? That was exactly what needed to happen. I needed to stand up for myself. I needed to stop being a doormat. And Adrian needed to face consequences. If anything, I wish I'd found that strength sooner. You found it when you were ready, Nina said. That's what matters. That evening, Trent and I went for a walk along the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. We walked hand in hand, not talking much, just enjoying the moment. What are you thinking about? Trent asked eventually. Everything, I said. How different my life is now compared to 3 years ago. How I almost didn't believe I deserved this happiness. How grateful I am that I took the leap. Trent stopped walking and turned to face me. You know what I'm grateful for? That you were brave enough to leave something that wasn't working. That you valued yourself enough to walk away. Because if you hadn't, we wouldn't be here right now. He kissed me, soft and sweet, with the sound of waves crashing behind us. I love you, he said. Not in spite of everything you've been through, but because of it. Because it made you who you are. Strong, resilient, kind despite having every reason not to be. I love you too, I replied. Thank you for seeing me. Really seeing me. Always, Trent promised. We walked back to my apartment as the stars came out. Inside we cooked dinner together, laughing and talking about our days. This was my life now. This beautiful, peaceful, fulfilling life that I'd built from the ashes of my old one. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was radiant. Confident. Happy. She wore no mask, played no role. She was simply herself, and that was enough. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, standing in her kitchen, hearing her husband say he'd found his true love. That woman had been scared and uncertain. She'd thought her worth was tied to being married, to being needed, to being indispensable to someone who didn't appreciate her. But this woman, the one in the mirror now, knew differently. She knew her worth came from within. From the business she'd built. From the relationships she'd nurtured. From the strength she'd found when everything fell apart. From her ability to choose herself even when it was hard. I thought about Adrian's words from this morning. No hard feelings. Just gratitude and hope. That summed it up perfectly. I was grateful for what I'd learned, grateful for the woman I'd become. And I had hope, so much hope for the future. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. Just heard from a friend that Adrian's engaged. To someone from his firm apparently. Thought you should know in case you see it on social media. I smiled and typed back, good for him. I hope they're happy together. And I meant it. Adrian deserved happiness just as I did. We'd been wrong for each other, but that didn't mean we couldn't both find right matches eventually. I climbed into bed next to Trent, who was already half asleep. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. Love you, he murmured. Love you too, I whispered back. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about how far I'd come. From a woman who made herself small to please her husband, to a woman who stood tall in her own power. From someone who thought she needed a man to complete her, to someone who knew she was complete all on her own. The divorce hadn't destroyed me. It had freed me. And now I was building a life that was authentically mine. A life filled with love, success, purpose, and joy. A life where I didn't have to shrink to make room for someone else's insecurity. A life where I could be fully myself and be celebrated for it. 3 years ago, Adrian had told me he'd found his true love and wanted a divorce. What he didn't know, what neither of us knew at the time, was that he was giving me the greatest gift possible. He was giving me back to myself. And I would be forever grateful for that. As I fell asleep, I smiled. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and continue building this beautiful life. I'd work on projects I was passionate about. I'd plan a wedding to a man who truly loved and respected me. I'd mentor young women starting their own businesses. I'd have dinner with friends and laugh until my stomach hurt. I'd live fully and boldly without apology or compromise. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. The only person who could complete me was myself. Everything else, the love, the partnership, the success, those were beautiful additions to a foundation I'd built alone. And what a beautiful foundation it was.